Good evening, afternoon. It's evening somewhere, I guess. The meeting is now called to order. Good afternoon. I'm the chair of the United States Sentencing Commission, Carlton W. Reeves, and I welcome you all to this hearing. I thank each of you for joining us, whether you're in this room or attending with us via live stream. I have the honor of opening this hearing with my fellow commissioners. To my right, we have Vice Chair Louis Felipe Restrepo and Commissioner Candace Wong. To my left, we have Vice Chair Claire Murray. To her left, Vice Chair Laura Mate, and our ex officio Commissioner Scott Meisler. The first order of business is a vote to adopt the December 19th, 2024 public meeting minutes. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on the motion? Let's vote on the motion by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? The motion is adopted by voice vote of a majority of the members. The next item of business is a vote to adopt the January 24th, 2025 public meeting minutes. Is there a motion to do so? All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this motion? Let's vote on the motion by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? No nays. The motion is adopted by voice vote of a majority of the members. The next item of business is the report of the chair. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're voting on amendments to the sentencing guidelines we have been working on over the last year. But the commission has been doing much more than making amendments. Just last week, we created two new advisory groups. One is a Sentence Impact Advisory Group, which will ensure that those who have served federal sentences and their families get to directly shape our work. The other group is the Ad Hoc Research and Data Practices Advisory Group, which will allow us to better understand and incorporate best practices. You can apply to serve on these advisory groups by visiting our website, www.ussc.gov. The application deadline is June 6. I encourage every person interested in making federal sentencing fairer to apply. But you don't have to serve on an advisory group to participate in the commission's work. Each year, the commission holds a pair of special training seminars. One is just for federal judges. It will be held from June 25th through June 27th in Chicago. The other seminar is for everyone. That annual training seminar will be held from August 19th through August 21st in Salt Lake City, Utah. For the judges, the seminar registration is still open. The national training registration will open next week. So please go to our website if you're interested in registering. And you know where that is, www.ussc.gov. Today's meeting marks the end of our third policymaking cycle of this commission. Let me be clear. When I say the commission, I'm talking about all of us at the commission, not just the persons who sit along with me here, my fellow commissioners. We are an agency of over 100 employees, 100 people, 100 persons, 100 public servants, some of whom are in this room, many of whom are not. No matter where they are working right now, each member of our team played an essential role in crafting the policies we are about to vote on. I want every member of the public to understand and to know whatever we do today It is only because of the dedication and the sacrifice of these public employees. They don't do it for money. They don't do it for fame. They do it because they care. They care about this work. They care about this country. Every American should be thankful for the tireless work of these federal employees and so many others like them. What makes today special isn't just the people inside of the commission. It's the people outside, too. When we started this amendment cycle, we asked the public to tell us what work to do. And in response, we received more than 1,200 pages of very insightful and thoughtful recommendation from judges, members of Congress, executive branch officials, probation officers, advisory groups, attorneys, professors, advocates, organizations, and even incarcerated persons and others. I cannot express how thankful the Commission is for that overwhelming amount of public feedback. From the halls of the Senate to the desk of prison librarians, countless people took the time to give us ideas about how to make our criminal justice system fairer. Their ideas were thoughtful, their ideas were well searched, and their ideas illuminated the path forward for the Commission this last year. I want to give a special shout out, though, to a group of commenters on Capitol Hill. For everyone who thinks that bipartisanship is a thing of the past, go look at the public comments the Commission received this year. You'll find a coalition of Democrats and Republicans who work together to send us ideas, including on how to make supervision safer. I'm so grateful to the many senators and representatives who paved the path forward for the Commission's work, for our own work in this area. Whether you wrote to us again from the halls of the Senate or the desk of a prison library, you may see your comments reflected in the policies we are voting on today. And when you do, know that that is no coincidence. Your words had impact. Without you and every other person who sent us a comment or participated in a roundtable or served on one of our advisory groups, we would not be here today. The policies we vote on today are proof of the promise we made long ago and the promise that we have kept. That promise is, when you speak to the Commission, you will be heard. I like reminding people of that promise, but today I want to remind people of what it takes to keep that promise. And what it takes is the people sitting next to me. Over the last year, every one of my colleagues have gone above and beyond. I don't know of a group of policymakers more willing to listen, learn, compromise, and sacrifice to get the job done. And I appreciate it extraordinarily, or appreciate it deeply. We often debate, we often disagree, but we never waver from our commitment to putting our country first. And it is that commitment above anything else that has produced the policies we are about to vote on. Commissioner Meisler, Commissioner Wong, VC Restrepo, VC Mate, and VC Murray. There are no better people with whom I could do this work. I could not be more honored to be serving with each of you. So, those are my opening statements. And now I will turn to the next item of business, which is possible votes to promulgate proposed amendments. The General Counsel, Kathleen Greeley, will advise the Commission on the first possible vote concerning a proposed simplification amendment.
Thank you, Judge Reeves. The proposed simplification amendment before you would restructure the guideline manual to simplify both the current three-step process utilized in determining a sentence that is sufficient but not greater than necessary, and existing guidance in the guidelines manual regarding a court's consideration of the individual circumstances of the defendant as well as certain offender characteristics. Consistent with the revised approach, the proposed amendment would delete most departures currently provided throughout the guideline manual, with the exception of those pertaining to substantial assistance to the authorities and early disposition programs. And there are other changes made throughout the manual to implement this process. A motion to promulgate the proposed simplification amendment with an effective date of November 1st, 2025, and technical and conforming amendment to staff is appropriate at this time.
Is there a motion to promulgate the proposed amendment as suggested by our general counsel?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Well, let's vote on the motion by saying aye. Aye. The motion is adopted, and let the record reflect that at least 4 commissioners voted in favor of the motion. The General Counsel will now advise the Commission on a possible vote concerning a supervised release amendment.
The proposed amendment before you on supervised release has 2 parts. The policies regarding supervised release are currently found in Chapter 5 and Chapter 7 of the Guideline Manual. Part A of the proposed amendment would revise Chapter 5 by adding introductory commentary to Part D of the chapter, amending the provisions of 5D 1.1 addressing the imposition of a term of supervised release, amending 5D 1.2, which addresses the length of a term of supervised release, amending 5D 1.3, which addresses conditions of supervised release, and adding a new policy statement at 5D 1.4, addressing a court's authority to extend, terminate, or modify the conditions of supervised release. Part B addresses Chapter 7 of the Guideline Manual. It adds commentary highlighting the differences between probation and supervised release and explains how these differences have led the Commission to recommend different approaches to handling violations of probation and violations of supervised release. It separates the chapter by creating a new Part C in Chapter 7 to address supervised release violations. It duplicates 7B 1.1 and 7B 1.2 in new 7C 1.1 and 7C 1.2, which would address supervised release, classification of violation, and reporting of violations. It creates a new 7C 1.3, establishing actions that a court may take in response to a report of noncompliance with supervised release or finding of a violation. It adds 7C 1.4 to address instances of revocation, and 7C 1.5, which duplicates 7B 1.4, setting forth a supervised release revocation table. Finally, 7C 1.6 would duplicate 7B 1.5, which provides that upon revocation of supervised release, no credit shall be given for time previously served on post-release supervision. A motion to promulgate the proposed supervised release amendment with an effective date of November 1st, 2025, and with technical and conforming amendment to staff is appropriate at this time.
Is there a motion to promulgate the proposed amendment as suggested by the General Counsel?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Let's vote on the motion by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? The motion is adopted, and please let the record reflect that at least 4 commissioners voted in favor of the motion. The General Counsel will now advise the Commission on a possible vote concerning an amendment addressing drug offenses.
The amendment addressing drug offenses contains 2 parts. Part A of the proposed amendment contains 2 subparts that would amend 2D 1.1 to address concerns about lower-level drug trafficking offenders. Subpart 1 of Part A of the proposed amendment would revise the provisions at 2D 1.185 to set a mitigating roll cap. At level 32, if a defendant has a base offense level above 34 and receives an adjustment under 3B1.2, which has to do with a lower level mitigating and minor role. If a defendant has a resulting base offense level greater than 30 and receives a 4-level adjustment under 3B1.2a, either by direct application of 3B1.2 or by use of the special instruction being created in Subpart 2 of this amendment, a mitigating role cap of 30 would apply. Subpart 2 of Part A of the proposed amendment would add a new special instruction at 2D1.1 regarding the application of 3B1.2 to 2D11 cases. It directs the court to determine either whether an adjustment under 3B1.2 applies, as the court already does under the manual, or look and see if an adjustment is warranted if the defendant's primary function in the offense was performing a low-level trafficking function. It also provides directions to the court on when the specific adjustments at 3B1.2a and b are generally warranted in drug trafficking cases. Finally, the special instruction at subsection E2b would state that for purposes of determining whether an individual should receive an adjustment based on the low-level trafficking function, the provisions of 3B1.2 apply, except the requirements for multiple participants and that the defendant be substantially less culpable than the average participant. The special instruction would also include a provision indicating that the mitigating role provisions at subsection A5, which is the mitigating role cap, and the 2-level reduction at subsection B7 apply, regardless of whether the defendant receives the required adjustment from 3B1.2 by direct application or by use of the special instruction. Part B of the proposed amendment addresses the 2-level enhancement at 2D1.1B13, where the defendant represented or marketed as a legitimately manufactured drug another mixture or substance containing fentanyl or a fentanyl analog. That adjustment currently applies if the defendant acted with willful blindness or conscious avoidance of knowledge that the mixture or substance was not the legitimately manufactured drug. Part B of the proposed amendment would revise that enhancement to change the mens rea requirement to reckless disregard. A motion to promulgate the amendment addressing drug offenses with an effective date of November 1st, 2025, and with technical and conforming amendment authority to staff is appropriate at this time.
Is there a motion to promulgate the proposed amendment as suggested by the General Counsel? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Let's vote on the motion by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? The motion is adopted, and let the record reflect that at least 4 commissioners voted in favor of the motion. The General Counsel will now advise the Commission on a possible vote concerning an amendment addressing firearm offenses.
The firearm offenses amendment would address concerns that the Commission has heard that 2K2.1 insufficiently addresses offenses involving MCDs, machine gun conversion devices. The amendment would address these concerns by amending 2K2.1 to set forth a new tiered specific offense characteristic to apply cases involving MCDs. Subparagraph A would provide a 2-level enhancement when an individual possessed 4 or more MCDs or transferred or sold any MCD. Subparagraph B would provide for a 4-level enhancement when an individual possessed 30 or more MCDs. This new specific offense characteristic would be added as subsection B5 and would be subject to the cumulative offense level cap of 29 at 2K2.1. Additionally, the proposed amendment provides a definition of machine gun conversion devices. A motion to promulgate the amendment on firearm offenses with an effective date of November 1st, 2025, and with technical and conforming amendment authority to staff is appropriate at this time.
Is there a motion to promulgate the proposed amendments as suggested by the General Counsel?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on the motion? Let's vote on the motion by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? The motion is adopted, and let the record reflect that at least 4 commissioners voted in favor of the motion. The General Counsel will now advise the Commission on a possible vote concerning an amendment addressing circuit conflicts.
This proposed amendment addresses two circuit conflicts. Part A addresses a circuit conflict concerning whether the physically restrained enhancement at 2B3.1 B4B can be applied to situations in which a victim is restricted from moving at gunpoint but is not otherwise immobilized through physical measures such as those listed in the physically restrained definition set forth in the commentary to 1B1.1. Part B of the proposed amendment would generally adopt the approach of the Second, Third, Fifth, Seventh, and Ninth Circuits that the psychological coercion of a firearm alone is not enough for the physically restrained enhancement at 2B3.1 B4B to apply. It therefore amends that SOC to clarify that the increase applies only in cases in which any person's freedom of movement was restricted through physical contact or confinement, such as being tied, bound up, or locked up to facilitate commission of the offense or to facilitate escape. The enhancement would thus not apply if a person's freedom of movement was restricted through use of a firearm without physical contact or confinement. To clarify guideline application for use of a firearm during a robbery, the Part A of the proposed amendment would instead amend 2B3.1B2, which provides for tiered offense level increases for threats and weapons. Part A amends that enhancement to provide that the 6th-level increase which is currently for when a firearm is otherwise used would instead apply if a firearm was used to convey a specific, not general threat of harm. Example, pointing the firearm at specific victim or victims, directing the movement of specific victim or victims with the firearm, or to make physical contact with a victim like pistol whipping or placing the firearm against the victim's body. For consistency, Part A of the proposed amendment would similarly change the physically restrained enhancements at 2B3.2 B5B and 2E 2.1 B3B, and the otherwise used enhancements at 2B3.2 B3A Romanet 2 and 2E 2.1 B1B. Part A of the proposed amendment would also include conforming changes to the commentary of those guidelines and 2X 1.1. Part B of the proposed amendment addresses a circuit conflict concerning 4A 1.2a. That guideline outlines whether multiple prior sentences should be counted separately or treated as a single sentence for purposes of assigning criminal history points. Prior sentences should be counted separately if the sentences imposed were for offenses that were separated by an intervening arrest. There is a circuit conflict split over the meaning of intervening arrest. Part B of the proposed amendment would respond to the circuit conflict by adding language to 4A 1.2a2, clarifying that a traffic stop is not an intervening arrest. A motion to promulgate the circuit conflict amendment with an effective date of November 1st, 2025, and technical and conforming amendment authority to staff would be appropriate at this time.
Is there a motion to promulgate the proposed amendment as suggested by the General Counsel?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on the motion? Let's vote on the motion by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? The motion is adopted, and let the record reflect that at least 4 commissioners voted in favor of the motion. Our General Counsel will now advise us on the next item of business.
Part A of the Drug Offenses Amendment and both parts of the Circuit Conflict Amendment that you just promulgated may have the effect of lowering the term of imprisonment recommended in the guidelines for some previously sentenced individuals. In light of that, is there a motion pursuant to Rule 2.2 of the Commission's Rules of Practice and Procedure to instruct staff to prepare a retroactivity impact analysis for Part A of the Drug Offenses Amendment and both parts of the Circuit Conflict Amendment?
Is there a motion to instruct staff to prepare a retroactivity impact analysis as suggested by the General Counsel?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Let's vote on the motion by saying aye. Aye. Any nays?
Nay.
The motion is adopted, and let the record reflect that at least 3 commissioners voted in favor of the motion. Our general counsel will now advise us on the next item of business.
The next item of business is a possible vote to publish in the Federal Register an issue for comment on whether to make Part A of the Drug Offenses Amendment and both parts of the Circuit Conflict Amendment retroactive. A motion to publish the issue for comment with a public comment period closing on June 2nd, 2025, and technical and conforming amendment authority to staff would be appropriate at this time.
Is there a motion to publish the issue for comment as suggested by the general counsel?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on the motion? Let's vote on the motion by saying aye. Aye. Any nays?
Nay.
The motion is adopted, and let the record reflect that at least 3 commissioners voted in favor of the motion. Is there any further business before the commission? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Let's vote on the motion by saying aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Okay, you've said aye. Any opposed? None opposed. The motion is adopted by voice vote, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.